Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a powerful sermon that unpacks one of life's biggest paradoxes. It's a question that's been around forever, right? We're going to explore it through this incredible ancient story about a guy who, by all accounts, had achieved it all, and yet he felt this deep, profound emptiness. So let's get into it.
So, our story starts with this successful, well-respected young man. He approaches a famous teacher, Jesus, with a question that, honestly, gets right to the heart of what it means to be human.
Now listen to how he asks that. The way he frames it is so telling. He sees fulfillment as something you earn, like a cosmic box you have to check. It was a super common way of thinking back then. He's basically asking for a to-do list for his soul.
And Jesus' first response is interesting. He kind of meets the guy where he's at. He points him right back to the moral and spiritual rulebook that this young man already knows like the back of his hand. You know, the very foundation of his life.
And this is the real core of the problem. The young man says, yep, done all that. Followed every single rule since I was a kid. But you can just feel it. He's still haunted by this nagging question, what am I still missing? He's done everything right, but he feels incomplete. And he knows it.
Well, the sermon we're drawing from actually gives this feeling a name. It calls it the crisis of stability. And it's this fascinating idea that the very things we chase after for security can end up being the source of our emptiness.
I mean, if you looked at this guy from the outside, he was the poster child for success. His life was built on these three huge pillars of stability that, let's be honest, most of us spend our entire lives trying to get.
So what were they? Well, first, financial stability. The text says he was very wealthy. Second, familial stability. He came from a good family, raised with strong morals. And third, spiritual stability. He was a good person, he followed the commandments, he practiced his faith. Check, check, and check. And yet, even with all of that, there was this massive, aching void inside him.
And this quote from the source material just nails it. The argument is that this crisis, it's not some personal failure on his part. It's actually a feature of being human. It's like we're designed with this empty space inside of us that absolutely nothing, no amount of money, success, or even good behavior can ever truly fill.
Okay, so this is where the story takes a huge turn. Because the answer Jesus gives him is, wow. It's not what anyone would expect. It completely sidesteps the guy's whole mindset of earning and achieving and just cuts right to something way, way deeper.
When you first hear that, it sounds impossible, right? Be perfect? It sounds like this crushing demand for flawless moral perfection. But the sermon points out that the English translation we're used to might be missing the real profound meaning here.
See, the original Greek word used is Teleios, and this is super important. It doesn't really mean perfect in the way we think of it, like being sinless or never making a mistake. It's more about being complete or whole. Think of it like being finished or reaching the end goal you were designed for.
So this changes everything, doesn't it? The offer wasn't for moral perfection, it was an invitation to be made whole. Jesus was essentially saying, hey, you know that emptiness you feel? That thing you're lacking? If you want to be truly complete, if you want to fill that void, here's how.
But what happens next is just so revealing. The young man's reaction tells us everything we need to know about why this kind of worldly stability, this endless chase for more, can actually become its own kind of prison.
He just couldn't do it. The story says he walked away sad, heartbroken even. And why? Not because the task was too difficult, but because his stuff, his possessions, they owned him. His wealth had become more than just wealth. It was an idol. It was the thing competing for first place in his life.
And this isn't a new idea. It totally echoes the wisdom of King Solomon, a guy who was probably one of the wealthiest people to ever live. And what did he conclude? That anyone who loves money will never have enough. Chasing wealth is like chasing the wind. It's an empty pursuit that never, ever satisfies.
So this is where the sermon really connects this ancient story to a very modern idea. It draws this sharp contrast between two ways of thinking about faith. On one hand, a man-centered gospel, where Jesus is a means to an end, a way to get earthly things. On the other, a Christ-centered gospel, where the relationship with Him is the end goal. He's the source of satisfaction, not the tool to get it.
And that leads to a really critical point. I mean, think about it. If faith is only presented as a fix for your temporary problems, what happens when those problems don't get fixed? Well, people can end up feeling disappointed, even betrayed, and they might just walk away, sad, just like that young man did. Okay, so if earthly stability is a trap, and the pursuit of more is just empty, then what's the answer? What's the alternative? Well, the sermon proposes a totally different kind of fulfillment. And this is it. This is the answer to that crisis of stability. It's not about finding some external well that you have to keep going back to. No, it's described as an internal spring, a source of water welling up inside you that never runs dry. It's satisfaction that comes from within. And yep, there's another fantastic Greek word for this, pleroma. It just means fullness, that which has been filled. It describes being made complete. You see the theme here? It's not about what you have, it's about who you are. It's about being made whole from the inside out.
And this brings us to the final, big contrast, the instability of riches versus true, eternal stability. Any confidence we place in temporary things, money, jobs, status, is shaky at best. All of it can be lost. But this eternal stability, it doesn't depend on your circumstances at all, because your confidence is placed in an internal, unchanging source.
So when you boil it all down, the ultimate takeaway is this. True contentment isn't circumstantial. It's not about getting everything you want. It's about learning to draw from a source of strength that's there for you whether you have a lot or a little. A deep sense of peace that the chaos of the outside world just can't touch.
And so that ancient story leaves us with a very modern and kind of piercing question for ourselves. This story isn't really about some rich guy from 2,000 years ago, is it? It's a mirror. It's asking us, right now, to look at our own lives and ask, what is competing for first place in my life? What are my great possessions, my career, my reputation, my security, that I'm clinging to so tightly they might actually be keeping me from being truly whole?